Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human starship Discovery, watching the stars blur past through the main view screen. Her ship was traveling through space toward the Zephyrian core worlds. This was supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission, nothing more than signing trade agreements and showing that humans wanted peace with their alien neighbors. Sarah had been chosen for this mission because she was one of the few humans who understood alien cultures. She had studied different species for years and knew how to talk to them without causing problems. The crew respected her, and the Earth government trusted her judgment. "Commander, we're getting a strange signal," called out Lieutenant Martinez from the communications station. "It's not coming from the Zephyrian homeworld. It's coming from somewhere else." Sarah frowned and walked over to look at the data on Martinez's screen. The signal was strong and appeared to be some kind of military communication. This was odd because they were still 3 days away from Zephyrian space. "Can you decode it?" Sarah asked. "Working on it now, ma'am," Martinez replied, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. "It's definitely Zephyrian, but it's using an old encryption pattern. Very old." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's alarm system began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout the bridge, and everyone immediately moved to their battle stations. "Commander!" shouted Ensign Park from the sensor station. "Massive ship approaching from behind. It's huge!" Sarah spun around to look at the main screen. The stars disappeared as an enormous shadow fell across their ship. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. A Zephyrian dreadnought, easily 10 times the size of her ship, had appeared out of nowhere. Its dark metal hull was covered in weapon systems, and strange blue lights pulsed along its sides. "All stop," Sarah ordered. "Raise shields, but do not power weapons. Let's not start a war by accident." The massive alien ship moved alongside the Discovery like a whale swimming next to a small fish. Sarah had seen Zephyrian ships before, but never one this large or this advanced. This was clearly a royal vessel, something belonging to the highest levels of Zephyrian society. "Incoming message," Martinez announced. "They want to talk." "Put it on screen," Sarah said, straightening her uniform. The view screen flickered, and suddenly Sarah was looking at the bridge of the alien ship. The lighting was different from human ships, softer and more blue. Standing in the center was a tall figure in an elaborate military uniform. The being was clearly Zephyrian, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. But something was different about this one. Most Zephyrians had a faint glow around their heads, a sign of their telepathic abilities. This one did not. Instead, the alien was making complex hand gestures while speaking. "Human vessel Discovery," the alien said in perfect English. "I am Princess Kyle Ara, commander of the 3rd Royal Fleet of the Zephyrian Empire. I request permission to come aboard your ship." Sarah stared at the screen in shock. The name hit her like a physical blow. Kyle Ara. It couldn't be the same person. But as she looked more closely at the alien's face, she began to recognize features she remembered from long ago. 15 years earlier, Sarah had been just a young lieutenant on humanity's first diplomatic mission to the Zephyrian homeworld. The mission had been tense. Both species were nervous about first contact. The Zephyrians were a proud race with powerful telepathic abilities, and they looked down on humans as primitive creatures who could only communicate with sounds and gestures. During that mission, Sarah had met a young Zephyrian girl named Kyle Ara. The girl was different from the others. She had been born without the telepathic abilities that all Zephyrians possessed. Her own people treated her as defective, broken, worthless. She could not speak mind to mind like other Zephyrians, so she had learned to communicate with hand signs instead. While the other diplomats ignored the girl, Sarah had taken the time to learn Kylara's sign language. She had treated the young alien with kindness and respect, seeing her as a person rather than a disability. They had spent hours together, with Sarah teaching Kailara about human culture and Kailara sharing stories about Zephyrian history, when the diplomatic mission ended. Sarah had been forced to leave. She had often wondered what happened to the lonely alien girl who had become her friend. Now, looking at the powerful military commander on her screen, Sarah realized she had her answer. "Kailara?" Sarah said softly. "Is it really you?" The alien. Princess smiled, an expression that looked strange on a Zephyrian face, but somehow familiar to Sarah. "Hello, Sarah Chen. Yes, it is me. I was hoping you would remember." Sarah felt her crew looking at her with confusion, but she ignored them. "Of course I remember. But how did you— you're a princess now? A fleet commander?" "Many things have changed since we last met," Kailara said, still using sign language along with her spoken words. "I have much to tell you. May I come? Aboard? I promise you are in no danger. My ships will not harm yours." "Ships?" Sarah asked, looking around. As if responding to her question, more shadows fell across the view screen. Sarah looked up to see not one, but 5 massive Zephyrian warships surrounding the Discovery. Her small diplomatic vessel was completely surrounded by one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy. "Commander," whispered Lieutenant Martinez. "Should I send a distress signal to Earth?" Sarah thought for a moment. If Kailara wanted to destroy them, she could have done it already. The fact that she was asking permission to come aboard suggested this was still a diplomatic meeting, not an attack. "No," Sarah said finally. "Princess Kailara, you have permission to come aboard. But I have to ask, why now? Why here? And why such a large escort?" Kailara's expression grew serious. "Because, old friend, I need your help. The Zephyrian Empire faces a threat unlike anything we have ever encountered. Our traditional ways of fighting are useless against this enemy. We need something different. We need human thinking." "What kind of threat?" Sarah asked. "The kind that could destroy not just our empire, but every living thing in this part of the galaxy," Kailara replied. "I will explain everything when I arrive. But Sarah, I want you to know that I have never forgotten your kindness to me. When my own people saw only my disability, you saw my potential. Now I hope to return that favor." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders, but Sarah's mind was racing. What could be so dangerous that a Zephyrian princess would risk coming to ask humans for help? And why her specifically? Whatever was happening, Sarah had the feeling that her simple diplomatic mission had just become something much more complicated. 2 hours later, Sarah stood in the Discovery's main conference room, watching as Princess Kailara entered through the airlock. The alien princess had grown taller since Sarah last saw her, and she now wore an impressive military uniform covered in medals and symbols of rank. But her eyes were the same, intelligent, determined, and still carrying a hint of the loneliness Sarah remembered from years ago. "Sarah," Kailara said, making the hand signs Sarah remembered while speaking aloud. "Thank you for allowing me aboard your ship." "It's good to see you again, Kailara," Sarah replied, then paused. "Should I call you Princess now? Or Your Highness?" Kailara smiled. "When we are alone, just call me Kailara. We are friends, are we not?" Sarah nodded and gestured for Kailara to sit at the conference table. "So tell me, what happened after I left? How did you become a fleet commander?" Kailara's expression grew distant. "It was not easy. After you left, I realized something important. You showed me that being different was not the same as being weak, so I decided to prove that to my people." She stood and walked to the large window that showed the stars. "Outside, I studied warfare, strategy, engineering, everything I could learn. I could not read minds like other Zephyrians, so I learned to read faces, body language, patterns. I became better at understanding people than those who could hear their thoughts. That's amazing, Sarah said. But how did you convince your people to give you command of a fleet? I won battles, Kylara said simply. Small ones at first against pirates and raiders, then larger ones against rebel groups. Each victory proved that my different way of thinking had value. Eventually, even the High Council could not ignore my success. Sarah felt proud of her old friend, but she sensed there was more to the story. And now you need human help with something? Kylara turned back to face Sarah, and her expression was grave. Yes, we face something called the Void Swarm. They appeared 6 months ago at the edge of our territory. We thought they were just another hostile species at first. She activated a small device, and suddenly the room filled with holographic images. Sarah gasped as she saw recordings of space battles. Massive black ships shaped like insects moved through space in perfect formation. Where they passed, entire planets went dark. They consume everything, Kylara explained. Planets, ships, people, all of it disappears into their vessels. We have lost 12 star systems already. Sarah studied the battle recordings. The Zephyrian ships fought bravely, but something was wrong. Their usual coordinated attacks seemed clumsy and ineffective against the dark swarm ships. Your telepathic battle coordination isn't working against them, Sarah observed. Exactly, Kylara said, clearly impressed. You see the problem immediately. The swarm has some kind of hive mind. Our telepathic warriors try to coordinate their attacks, but the enemy adapts instantly to our plans. It is as if they know what we will do before we do it. Sarah frowned as she watched more of the recordings. Your ships are incredibly advanced, much more powerful than ours. If you can't stop them, what makes you think humans can help? Kylara sat down across from Sarah and leaned forward intently. Because humans fight differently. You do not coordinate like we do. Each human ship captain makes their own decisions. You are chaotic. Thanks, I think, Sarah said with a small laugh. No, you do not understand, Kylara continued earnestly. Chaos is exactly what we need. The swarm expects coordinated attacks, because that is how most spacefaring species fight. But humans are unpredictable. You make decisions that no logical mind would make. You take risks that seem impossible. You adapt and improvise in ways that our enemies cannot predict. Sarah began to understand what Kylara was asking. You want us to fight alongside your fleets? More than that, Kylara said. I want you to train a joint force. Human captains working with Zephyrian crews and Zephyrian commanders learning human tactics. We could combine your unpredictability with our advanced technology. Sarah sat back in her chair, stunned by the proposal. Kylara, that's never been done before. Our species have barely begun to trust each other. And you're talking about sharing military secrets, combining our forces. I know it sounds impossible, Kylara said. But I have studied human military history. You have a saying, desperate times call for desperate measures. Our situation is very desperate. Sarah looked at the holographic images still floating in the air. Entire worlds consumed by darkness. Millions of lives lost. She could see why Kylara was willing to try anything. What does the Zephyrian High Council think about this plan? Sarah asked. Kylara's expression darkened. They do not know about it yet. What? Sarah stood up quickly. You mean you came here without permission? I have permission to explore all possible solutions to the swarm threat, Kylara said carefully. I simply have not told them exactly what solution I am exploring. Sarah began to pace around the room. Kylara, if your High Council discovers you're working with humans without their approval, what will happen to you? They will strip me of my rank and exile me, Kylara said quietly. Possibly worse. The High Council still believes humans are primitive creatures barely worthy of notice. Then why are you risking everything? Kylara stood and walked over to Sarah. Because I remember what you taught me 15 years ago. You showed me that sometimes the solution comes from the most unexpected place. Everyone else saw my disability, but you saw my potential. Now I see humanity's potential in a way my people cannot. She gestured to the battle recordings. Look at those images again, Sarah. Every conventional strategy has failed. Every traditional approach has led to defeat. If we continue fighting the way we always have, the swarm will consume our entire civilization within a year. Sarah studied her friend's face. She could see the desperation there, but also determination and hope. You really believe human tactics could make a difference? Sarah asked. I believe that you could make a difference, Kylara replied. You have something my people lack, the ability to think outside established patterns. The swarm expects us to be logical and coordinated, but humans are beautifully chaotic. Sarah looked once more at the recordings of the dark ships consuming entire worlds. The scale of the threat was overwhelming, but she remembered the lonely alien girl who had become her friend so many years ago. That girl had grown into a powerful leader who was now risking everything to save her people. If I agree to help, Sarah said slowly, it won't just be my career on the line. It will be Earth's relationship with the entire Zephyrian Empire. I understand the risk, Kylara said. But Sarah, I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who sees possibilities where others see only problems. 15 years ago, you were the only person who believed in me. Now I am asking you to believe in this impossible plan. Sarah took a deep breath and made her decision. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of a secret military station hidden in an asteroid field. The facility was enormous, larger than anything humans had ever built in space. Kylara had managed to convince a small group of Zephyrian military leaders to support her plan, but they had to keep it hidden from the High Council. The first group of volunteers arrives today, Kylara said, joining Sarah at the large window. I must warn you, they are not happy about this assignment. Sarah watched as 2 different types of ships approached the station. The sleek Zephyrian vessels moved in perfect formation, while the human ships flew in a more scattered pattern. Even their arrival showed the differences between the 2 species. How many volunteers do we have? Sarah asked. 50 Zephyrian warriors and 50 human marines, Kylara replied. All of them are elite fighters, but none of them have ever worked with the other species before. Sarah nodded. She had spent the past 3 weeks studying Zephyrian military tactics and technology. The aliens were incredibly advanced. Their ships could do things that seemed impossible to human engineers, but their fighting style was rigid and predictable. Every battle plan was carefully calculated, and all warriors moved together like parts of a single machine. The first meeting took place in the station's main training hall. Sarah entered to find the 2 groups standing on opposite sides of the room, clearly uncomfortable with each other. The Zephyrians stood in perfect rows, their pale blue skin glowing slightly with telepathic energy. The humans were more relaxed, but Sarah could see the tension in their faces. Welcome, everyone, Sarah began. I know this situation is unusual for all of us. We're here to learn how to fight together against an enemy that threatens both our species. A tall Zephyrian warrior stepped forward. Commander Chen, with respect, we do not understand why we need human assistance. Our technology is far superior to yours. Sarah had expected this attitude. You're absolutely right, Commander. Your ships are faster, stronger, and more advanced than ours. But tell me, how many battles have you won against the Void Swarm? The Zephyrian warrior's glow dimmed slightly. We have encountered difficulties. We've lost every single engagement, Kylara added bluntly. Our superior technology means nothing if we cannot adapt our tactics. A human marine sergeant raised her hand. Ma'am, if their ships are so much better than ours, what exactly are we supposed to teach them? Sarah smiled. Sergeant Martinez, show me how you would attack that target, she said, pointing to a holographic enemy ship that appeared in the center of the room. The sergeant studied the target for a moment, then began moving around it in an irregular pattern. I'd come in from the side, then suddenly change direction and hit it from below. Keep it guessing about where the next attack is coming from. Now you, Commander, Sarah said to the Zephyrian. Same target. The alien warrior immediately began calculating. Sarah could see his eyes glowing brighter as he used his telepathic abilities. The optimal approach is a coordinated strike from 3 directions simultaneously, maximum firepower concentration for minimum risk. Both approaches have value, Sarah said, but the swarm has already learned to counter your coordinated attacks. They haven't learned to counter chaos yet. The first training exercises were disasters. Sarah paired humans and Zephyrians together in small teams and gave them simple combat scenarios. The results were terrible. The Zephyrians became frustrated because they could not read human thoughts or predict their actions. The humans were overwhelmed by alien technology they did not understand. In one exercise, a human pilot accidentally activated a weapon system and nearly destroyed a training drone. In another, a Zephyrian warrior became so confused by his human partner's erratic movements that he forgot to activate his shields. After the third failed exercise, Sarah called a break. She found Kylara in her office looking discouraged. "This is not working," Kylara said. "My warriors think the humans are insane, and your Marines think my people are too rigid to be effective." Sarah sat down across from her friend. "Remember when we first met? You couldn't communicate with other Zephyrians because you were different. But that difference became your strength." "How?" Kylara asked. "Because you learned to see things they couldn't see. You read body language and facial expressions instead of thoughts. You found solutions they missed because you approached problems differently." Sarah stood up and walked to the window. "The problem isn't that humans and Zephyrians are too different. The problem is we're trying to make them the same. What if we embrace the differences instead?" The next day, Sarah tried a new approach. Instead of pairing humans and Zephyrians together, she created mixed units where each species did what they did best. Zephyrian warriors handled precision strikes and defensive formations, while human Marines focused on unpredictable attacks and rapid adaptation. The first test was a simulated battle against void swarm ships. Sarah watched from the command center as the mixed unit approached the enemy. The Zephyrians moved into a standard attack formation, but instead of following a predictable pattern, human ships suddenly broke away and attacked from unexpected angles. The simulated swarm ships tried to adapt to the Zephyrian formation, but the chaotic human attacks kept disrupting their defensive patterns. When the Zephyrian weapons finally fired, the enemy was completely unprepared. "Victory achieved," announced the computer. "Enemy forces eliminated with minimal casualties." The training hall erupted in cheers from both humans and Zephyrians. For the first time since arriving at the station, the two groups were celebrating together. Over the following days, Sarah watched as the mixed units grew more effective. The Zephyrians began to appreciate human creativity, while the Marines learned to trust alien technology. More importantly, they started to respect each other. A breakthrough came during a particularly difficult exercise. A Zephyrian commander named Veltar was working with Sergeant Rodriguez when their unit came under heavy simulated fire. The Zephyrians' careful battle plan was failing, and Rodriguez suggested a desperate gamble, using their ship as a decoy while other units flanked the enemy. "That plan has only a 30% chance of success," Veltar calculated. "Yeah, but it's a 30% chance they won't expect," Rodriguez replied. They tried the plan, and it worked perfectly. Afterward, Sarah overheard Veltar telling other Zephyrians, "The human was correct. Sometimes the unexpected choice is the right choice." By the end of the month, The mixed units were performing better than anyone had hoped. They combined Zephyrian precision with human unpredictability in ways that created entirely new tactical possibilities. But their success also created a new problem. Word of the training program had reached the Zephyrian High Council. "Princess Kilara," came an urgent message during one training session. "You are ordered to return to the homeworld immediately. The High Council demands an explanation for your unauthorized activities." Sarah saw fear in her friend's eyes for the first time since they had reunited. "If I go back now, they will shut down this program," Kilara said. "All our work will be wasted." "Then don't go back," Sarah said. "Not yet. We need more time." "If I disobey a direct order from the High Council, I will be declared a traitor," Kilara replied. "My own people will hunt me down." Before Sarah could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The training exercises stopped as everyone rushed to the command center. "What's happening?" Sarah demanded. "Void swarm ships," the station commander reported. "A large force just appeared at the edge of the system. They're heading straight for us." Sarah felt her blood turn cold. Somehow, the enemy had found their secret base. Their experimental mixed units were about to face their first real battle, ready or not. The command center filled with tension as everyone watched the main display screen. 15 massive black ships moved toward the secret training station like dark predators hunting their prey. Sarah had seen recordings of void swarm vessels before, but seeing them in person was terrifying. They looked like enormous insects made of shadow and metal, with strange lights pulsing along their hulls. "How did they find us?" Kilara demanded, staring at the approaching enemy fleet. "Unknown, Princess," replied the station commander. "Our location was completely secret. No one outside this facility knew we were here." Sarah studied the enemy formation on the screen. Something bothered her about the way the swarm ships moved. They were too organized, too careful. "They're not here by accident," she realized. "This isn't a random patrol. They came here specifically looking for us." "That's impossible," the station commander said. "How could they know about our training program?" Before anyone could answer, the swarm ships opened fire. Beams of dark energy struck the station's shields, causing the entire facility to shake violently. Emergency lights began flashing and the computer announced hull damage on several sections. "All units to battle stations," Kilara ordered. "Prepare for immediate launch." Sarah felt her heart racing as she ran toward the hangar bay. This was exactly what she had feared. Their experimental mixed units were about to face real combat before they were ready. They had only been training together for a month. Would it be enough? In the hangar, chaos filled the air as human marines, and Zephyrian warriors rushed to their ships. Sarah could see fear and excitement on faces from both species. These were elite fighters, but none of them had ever fought the Void Swarm before. "Listen up, everyone!" Sarah shouted over the noise. "Remember your training. Zephyrians provide precision and coordination. Humans provide unpredictability and adaptation. Trust your partners and trust yourselves." The mixed units launched from the station in waves. Sarah piloted her own fighter alongside Kilara's command ship, watching as their forces spread out to face the enemy. The swarm ships had already formed a perfect attack pattern, moving like parts of a single organism. "All units, this is Princess Kilara," came the voice over the communication system. "Execute Formation Alpha 7. Remember, stay unpredictable." The battle began badly. The first wave of mixed units attempted a coordinated attack, but the swarm ships adapted instantly. Dark energy weapons tracked every movement, and 3 human fighters were destroyed within seconds. Sarah watched in horror as her carefully trained pilots died in balls of fire. "They're reading our attack patterns," shouted Sergeant Rodriguez over the radio. "It's like they know what we're going to do." Sarah realized the problem immediately. The mixed units were still fighting too much like traditional Zephyrian forces. "All human pilots, break formation now. Go completely random. Confuse them." What happened next was beautiful chaos. Human fighters scattered in all directions, attacking from impossible angles and making decisions that seemed insane. One pilot flew directly at a swarm ship, then suddenly spun around and attacked from behind. Another used her ship's damaged engine as a weapon, ramming it into an enemy vessel. The swarm ships tried to adapt, but they couldn't predict the human attacks. Their perfect formations began to break apart as they struggled to respond to the chaotic assault. Now, Zephyrian. "Units!" Kylara commanded. "Precision strikes while they're confused!" The alien warriors struck with deadly accuracy. Their advanced weapons cut through swarm shields like knives through paper. Working together, the mixed units destroyed 5 enemy ships in less than 10 minutes. But victory came at a terrible cost. 12 fighters had been lost, and the training station was heavily damaged. Worse, Sarah realized something disturbing as she studied the wreckage of the destroyed swarm ships. "Kylara, I need to examine those enemy hulks immediately," Sarah said urgently. An hour later, Sarah floated in a spacesuit among the debris of a destroyed swarm vessel. What she found inside made her stomach turn cold. The ship's interior was filled with strange organic material. Not metal or circuits, but something that looked almost alive. "This isn't just technology," she reported to Kylara over the radio. "There's biological matter throughout the ship. It's like the vessel itself was once alive." Kylara joined her inside the wreckage, and together they explored deeper into the ship. In what must have been the command center, they found something that explained everything and made the situation far worse than they had imagined. Suspended in transparent tubes were dozens of figures from different species. Sarah recognized some of them. Zephyrians, yes, but also Kalari, Mexoni, and other races she had encountered during her diplomatic career. All of them appeared to be unconscious, connected to the ship's systems by cables and wires. "By the sacred void," Kylara whispered. "These are crew members from ships the swarm destroyed months ago. They're still alive." Sarah studied the readings on her scanner. "Not just alive. Their brain patterns are still active. Kylara, I think the swarm isn't just destroying civilizations. They're absorbing them. These people are being used as living computers." The implications hit both of them at the same time. The Void Swarm wasn't a separate species at all. It was a collection of conquered civilizations, their minds linked together and forced to serve as a hive mind. That's how they adapted so quickly to new tactics. They had the combined knowledge and experience of dozens of different races. "No wonder they found our secret base," Kylara said grimly. "If they have absorbed Zephyrian minds, they know our military protocols, our hiding places, everything." Sarah felt sick as she realized the full horror of what they were facing. "How many civilizations have they consumed?" "According to our intelligence, at least 30 species have gone missing in the past 5 years," Kylara replied. "If they're all in there, trapped and enslaved." They transmitted their findings back to the damaged station, where the surviving mixed units were regrouping. The discovery changed everything about their understanding of the enemy. "We can't just defeat the swarm," Sarah explained to the assembled pilots. "We have to find a way to free the minds trapped inside their ships. Those aren't just enemies we're fighting. They're prisoners who have been forced to fight against their will." The challenge seemed impossible. How do you free minds that have been absorbed into a hive consciousness? How do you break psychic chains that bind the thoughts of millions of people? But as Sarah looked around at the mixed human and Zephyrian crews, she began to see a possibility. Their success in battle had come from combining 2 completely different approaches to warfare. Maybe the solution to the swarm problem also required combining different kinds of thinking. "I have an idea," Sarah said slowly. "But it's going to require every human and Zephyrian in our combined fleets to work together in a way that's never been attempted before." Kylara looked at her friend with growing hope. "What do you have in mind?" Something completely insane, Sarah replied with a grim smile, which means it just might work. 2 days after the battle at the secret station, Sarah stood on the bridge of Kyle Ara's flagship as it approached the Zephyrian homeworld. The massive planet glowed like a blue jewel against the darkness of space, but dark clouds surrounded it. The Void Swarm had arrived first. Hundreds of black ships moved in perfect formation around the planet, like a swarm of insects preparing to devour their prey. Sarah counted at least 300 enemy vessels, the largest swarm force anyone had ever seen. "The main Zephyrian fleet is trapped in orbit," reported the ship's tactical officer. "They cannot break through the swarm's formation, but the enemy has not attacked the planet yet. It appears they are waiting for something." Kailara stood beside Sarah, her expression grim. "They're waiting for reinforcements. When enough swarm ships arrive, they will absorb our entire civilization at once." Sarah studied the battle displays, her mind racing. They had brought every available ship, 50 human vessels and 60 Zephyrian warships. Against 300 enemy ships, they had no chance in a normal battle. But this would not be a normal battle. "All ships, this is Commander Chen," Sarah announced over the fleet communications. "Begin Operation Mindbreak. Remember, our goal is not to destroy the enemy, it's to free them." Over the past 2 days, Sarah and Keel Ara had developed the most ambitious plan in galactic history. They would create a massive psychic network linking every human and Zephyrian in their combined fleets. The network would generate a liberation signal powerful enough to break the mental chains binding millions of enslaved minds inside the swarm ships. The plan was incredibly dangerous. If it failed, the psychic feedback could kill everyone involved. Worse, if the swarm detected the network, they could use it to absorb human and Zephyrian minds as well. But it was their only hope. "Zephyrian vessels, begin forming the telepathic link," Kyle Ara ordered. "Human ships, prepare to serve as network stabilizers." Sarah watched as blue lights began appearing on Zephyrian ships throughout the fleet. The alien warriors were connecting, their minds together, creating a web of thought that spanned space. But without human participation, the network would be too similar to normal Zephyrian telepathy. The swarm would recognize it and defend against it. "Human crews, activate neural interfaces," Sarah commanded. This was the most experimental part of the plan. Human minds could not generate telepathic energy, but they could disrupt and redirect it. By connecting human consciousness to the Zephyrian network, they could create something completely new, a hybrid mental structure that the swarm had never encountered before. Sarah felt the neural interface activate in her brain. Suddenly, she could sense the thoughts and emotions of every person in the fleet. The experience was overwhelming, thousands of minds touching hers at once. But at the center of it all, she felt Kailara's familiar presence, steady and reassuring. "Sarah," came Kailara's voice, speaking directly into her mind. "Are you ready?" "Ready," Sarah replied, though she was terrified. "Let's free them all." The combined fleet moved toward the swarm formation. The enemy ships immediately responded, turning to face the approaching threat. Dark energy weapons began charging, and the black vessels moved into attack position. "Beginning. Liberation transmission," announced the fleet's chief telepath. The psychic network activated with incredible power. Sarah felt the mental energy flowing through her mind like electricity. The sensation was painful but amazing. She could sense the thoughts of humans and Zephyrians working together, their different ways of thinking creating something beautiful and chaotic. The liberation signal struck the swarm ships like a wave of pure thought. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, incredibly, the perfect enemy formation began to waver. "It's working!" shouted the tactical officer. "Enemy coordination is breaking down." Sarah could feel what was happening through the psychic network. Inside the swarm ships, enslaved minds were beginning to remember who they used to be. The mental chains that bound them were weakening as the liberation signal disrupted the hive mind's control. but the swarm fought back. The largest enemy ships turned their weapons toward the source of the psychic transmission, Kyalara's flagship. Incoming. "Fire!" warned the ship's pilot. Dark energy beams struck their shields, causing the entire vessel to shake violently. Through the neural link, Sarah felt the pain and fear of everyone connected to the network. Some human minds began to disconnect as the psychic pressure became too intense. "Hold the link," Sarah commanded. "Don't let go." More swarm ships broke formation as their enslaved crews regained control. Some turned their weapons against other enemy vessels. Others simply stopped moving as confused minds struggled to remember their identities. But the largest swarm ships, the command vessels containing the most powerful hive mind nodes, continued to fight. They focused all their firepower on the ships generating the liberation signal. "We're losing too many vessels," Kyalara reported through the mental link. "The network is becoming unstable." Sarah felt the psychic structure beginning to collapse. Human minds were disconnecting to protect themselves, and Zephyrian telepaths were being overwhelmed by psychic feedback. They needed more power, more stability. Then Sarah remembered something from 15 years ago, the moment when she first met Kylara, a lonely alien girl who felt broken and worthless, a young human officer who saw potential instead of disability. The friendship that had grown from mutual understanding and acceptance. "Everyone, focus on that memory," Sarah projected through the network. "Remember why we're here. Remember who we're fighting for." She shared her memories of Kylara, not the powerful princess, but the scared young girl who had been rejected by her own people. She shared the moment when she decided to learn sign language, the hours spent talking about their different cultures, the friendship that transcended species barriers. Through the network, other minds began sharing similar memories. Humans remembered acts of kindness from Zephyrian colleagues. Zephyrians recalled moments when human creativity had solved impossible problems. The network stabilized as it became less about raw psychic power and more about genuine connection. Between different kinds of minds, the liberation signal changed, becoming something warmer and more personal. It no longer just disrupted the hive mind. It reminded the enslaved beings of what they had lost, what they could be again. The effect was dramatic. Across the swarm fleet, ships began shutting down their weapons. Crews that had been enslaved for years suddenly remembered their home worlds, their families, their individual identities. "The command ships are retreating," announced the tactical officer. Sarah watched through the view screen as the largest swarm vessels fled the battle. They could not maintain control over their enslaved crews once the liberation signal reminded them of their freedom. Within hours, the Zephyrian homeworld was safe. Hundreds of former swarm ships drifted powerlessly in space, their crews slowly remembering who they used to be. Rescue ships were already moving to help the liberated beings recover from their ordeal. "The other swarm fleets throughout the galaxy are also breaking apart," reported the communications officer. "The liberation signal somehow spread through their network. Enslaved minds everywhere are breaking free." Sarah felt exhausted but triumphant as the psychic network finally disconnected. Around her, human and Zephyrian crew members were hugging, each other celebrating their impossible victory. "We did it," Kylara said, approaching Sarah with tears in her large, dark eyes. "We actually did it." "You did it," Sarah replied. "You believed that different minds working together could accomplish the impossible." "You were right." Kylara smiled and made the hand signs that Sarah remembered from long ago. "No, my friend. We did it together, just like we always have." As Sarah looked out at the stars, she realized that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. Two species had learned to trust each other completely, to combine their strengths and accept their differences. The friendship that had begun between two lonely individuals had grown into something that could save entire civilizations. The Void Swarm was defeated, but more importantly, the galaxy had learned a new way to face impossible challenges, together.